Karoline Leavitt believed she could say anything on air and walk away without consequences. But one remark aimed at Jasmine Crockett triggered a political and legal storm that dismantled her career almost overnight. Barely 15 minutes into the live broadcast from Austin, Texas, the energy in the studio shifted. The panel featured a lineup of seasoned voices, experts in politics, law, and media. Yet the tension that followed didn't come from policy disagreements or partisan debates. It began when Karoline Leavitt leaned forward, a faint smirk on her face, and said something that would define her public image for years to come. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, representing Dallas, had just spoken calmly and thoughtfully about how race shapes perceptions of leadership in Congress. Her tone wasn't confrontational or emotional, just factual. "There's always an expectation to appear palatable, especially for women like me," she said. "If I'm direct, I'm called aggressive. If I'm quiet, I'm seen as unqualified. That tension is real." That's when Karoline interrupted. "Well, maybe," she said, voice thick with sarcasm, "if some people stopped playing the victim and acted like real leaders instead of running a victimhood campaign, we'd see more respect in politics." The room froze. Jasmine's expression hardened slightly, but she didn't speak. The moderator cleared her throat, uneasy. Karoline kept going. "Honestly, Jasmine, people don't dismiss you because of your skin color. Sorry, but it's because you act like everyone owes you something. That's not leadership. That's entitlement." The moderator went still. A murmur rippled through the audience. Jasmine stayed silent. Then in a calm, steady voice, she replied, "I don't need anyone to owe me anything. I work for my community. I speak with conviction because I carry generations behind me. And if that makes people uncomfortable, good." Her voice didn't rise, but her words landed with precision. Within minutes, the exchange was everywhere, clipped, shared, and debated across social media. Hashtags trended. Commentators called it everything from a meltdown to the mask slipping. TikTok creators drew parallels to historic examples of coded language and bias. Behind the scenes, the network was in chaos. Producers scrambled, PR teams drafted statements, and Karoline's aides begged her to apologize or at least clarify. But she didn't see it as a mistake. When cameras cut to commercial, she shrugged and said loudly, "I said what everyone's thinking." She just didn't like hearing it. She couldn't see what she had unleashed. What she thought was tough talk millions saw as targeted humiliation. Jasmine didn't storm off or argue. She adjusted her mic, sat quietly, and waited for the next question. That composure spoke louder than anything else she could have said. Viewers weren't just reacting, they were analyzing. Commentators and scholars began breaking down the exchange, calling it a textbook case of modern gaslighting disguised as political debate. But for Jasmine, this wasn't about viral outrage. It was personal and professional defamation broadcast nationwide. Her team immediately started collecting transcripts, video clips, and legal notes. And then the story deepened. Hours later, a former staffer from Karoline's office anonymously leaked private messages suggesting the poke and provoke tactic had been pre-planned. By sunrise, the clip had surpassed 12 million views. It dominated YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and cable news. But what caught people's attention wasn't only the words, it was the body language. Karoline looked smug, even proud, while Jasmine's calm silence carried a different kind of strength. Across the country, the exchange became a cultural flashpoint. A high school teacher in Memphis used it to start a class discussion about respect in politics. A pastor in St. Paul referenced it in his Sunday sermon. College students in Arizona printed quotes from it and taped them on bulletin boards beside the phrase, "Words carry weight, so do consequences." Still, not everyone was critical. Karoline's supporters, especially in conservative media, rushed to defend her. "She just said what others are afraid to say," one radio host in Tampa argued. "If we can't challenge race narratives, what's left of free speech?" Others tried to reframe it. It wasn't racist, just blunt honesty. Why can't we criticize people of color without being labeled? But this time that defense didn't hold. The clip didn't exist in isolation anymore. And within hours, journalists began uncovering more. Karoline's past comments began resurfacing. A 2019 college speech where she dismissed the concept of implicit bias, a 2021 podcast where she joked about code switching for white comfort, and a deleted tweet that described Congresswoman Crocker as aggressive with a touch of ghetto. Each revelation added pressure, and all eyes turned toward Jasmine. She hadn't said much publicly, just one tweet posted close to midnight. Words have power. To silence is to participate. My team and I are reviewing all options. Accountability matters. That single message set everything in motion. Within minutes, it was retweeted thousands of times. Civil rights groups released statements before sunrise. High-profile lawyers expressed support, and celebrities with millions of followers reposted Jasmine's clip with captions like, "This is why we speak out," and "We got your back." By midday, Jasmine's name was trending on 5 major platforms. She hadn't chased the spotlight, but now it was firmly on her. Her Dallas district office overflowed with flowers, letters, and hundreds of emails. One handwritten note on lined paper stood out. "My daughter saw you speak and said she wants to run for office one day. Thank you for staying calm when others tried to shake you." But Jasmine wasn't thinking about attention. Her focus was on purpose. "I'm not doing this for clicks," she told her chief of staff, Samira, in a closed-door meeting that afternoon. "This isn't about the moment. It's about the message." Samira nodded. "So, we go legal?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. Yes, all the way. They knew the risks. Challenging a prominent media figure would spark backlash. The right-wing press would call it censorship. Critics would label her emotional, thin-skinned, or accuse her of weaponizing race. But Jasmine was done letting people hide behind honest discourse to spread disrespect. "We have to stop normalizing racial insult as part of the job," she told her legal advisor later that day. "Not for me, and not for the next generation watching." By early evening, Jasmine's team issued an official statement. A lawsuit was being drafted, seeking $80 million in damages, both personal and professional. The number wasn't random. It was large enough to make headlines, serious enough to demand attention, and meaningful enough to send a message. There's a cost to crossing the line. Some outlets called it bold. Others dismissed it as political theater, but the major ones leaned in. The LA Times ran a front-page editorial titled, "The Cost of Silence in a Loud World." NPR aired a segment examining coded language and its impact on Black women in politics. The national conversation was shifting, and Jasmine was at the center of it. No one expected, however, how quickly Karoline's empire would start collapsing once corporate sponsors began to react. When the legal filing finally dropped, it hit like thunder. Filed in Harris County, Texas, Jasmine's legal team made sure the case would unfold on her terms, in her home state, under a microscope that had witnessed its share of high-profile trials. The document was 63 pages long, airtight and detailed. Every quote from Karoline's on-air remarks, every resurfaced tweet, every public statement, carefully documented, nothing left open to interpretation. The $80 million figure wasn't just for shock value. It was meticulously broken down, covering loss of credibility, reputational damage, emotional distress, and the long-term harm to Jasmine's professional image and leadership. But beyond numbers, it was about principle. And Jasmine's team was determined. Leading the case was attorney Brandon Keyes, a litigation specialist from San Antonio, known for his composure and precision in court. People said he never raised his voice, yet juries hung on every word. Jasmine liked that about him. "I want facts, not fury," she had told him before he accepted the case. Brandon was methodical. He stood on the courthouse steps beside Jasmine and Samira, speaking with precision and control. "This isn't about political disagreement," he said. "It's about deliberate defamation and the public destruction of character disguised as dialogue." Reporters captured every word. Jasmine stayed silent until the end, then spoke without notes. "I've seen what happens when you let things slide, when you laugh it off, when you take the high road. People think they can keep going, but words matter. This lawsuit isn't just about me. It's about every Black woman who's ever had to make herself smaller just to fit into spaces she's earned." The crowd fell silent. Inside Karoline's camp, panic had begun to spread. What started as simple spin control had turned into full-blown damage control. Sponsors began calling. Contracts were paused. One major network dropped an upcoming docuseries just days before filming. Her inbox went quiet, her phone stopped ringing, and even her longtime agent, the one who once called her the future of conservative media, quietly distanced himself. Still defiant, Karoline released a video from her home in New Hampshire. She didn't apologize. Instead, she doubled down. "This is a witch hunt. Cancel culture on steroids. I said what I said, and I won't walk it back to please the outrage mob." But the harder she pushed back, the worse it became. Former interns began speaking out. Anonymous sources leaked emails showing Karoline had encouraged strategic provocation when engaging progressive women of color, revealing it wasn't an accident, but a tactic. Meanwhile, Jasmine went back to work on Capitol Hill as if nothing had changed. She attended town halls, voted on legislation, and met with constituents. She wanted to show the public she wasn't hiding behind a lawsuit. She was standing above it. Still, it took a toll. Samira could see it. One night after a late meeting, Jasmine sat alone in her office, staring at her phone. Her thumb hovered over a message. "You okay?" Samira asked. Jasmine nodded, but the silence lingered. "You can say you're tired." "I'm not tired," Jasmine whispered. "I'm calculating. Every move matters now." The pressure was immense. Her inbox overflowed with support, but also with criticism. Some thanked her for standing firm. Others accused her of playing the race card, exploiting the system, or dividing people. She didn't reply. She knew her response would come in court. Brandon prepared the case with surgical precision. Depositions were scheduled, witnesses lined up. A producer from the live panel agreed to testify, confirming that Karoline's remarks were unscripted and shifted the tone of the discussion immediately. "I've been doing this for 20 years, the producer said. "I've never seen anything land like that." Legal experts began weighing in. The View discussed it. LegalZoom published a breakdown. CNN's legal analyst commented, "It's rare to see a defamation case this clear. The context, timing, and pattern are undeniable." Still, the risk was real. If Jasmine lost, the backlash would be fierce. She'd be branded as performative, accused of chasing money, and mocked for trying, and failing, to weaponize identity politics. But pressure doesn't always crush. Sometimes it refines, and Jasmine had never been sharper. The day after the lawsuit made national headlines, Karoline lost a speaking engagement at a Kansas university. The official reason was logistical conflicts, but insiders knew the truth. The administration didn't want protests filling the auditorium. A week later, two major podcast sponsors, both wellness brands with large online audiences, quietly cut ties. No statements, no explanations. Just gone. Still, Karoline refused to panic. She went live on her own platform, wearing a navy blazer, hair pinned neatly, sitting before her familiar American flag backdrop. "They want to silence me," she said firmly. "This is political warfare disguised as a lawsuit." The video gained traction. Her base supported her, but outside that circle, public opinion shifted. The issue wasn't the lawsuit. It was the evidence. Screenshots, leaked interviews, and unedited transcripts resurfaced, each one harsher under the spotlight. Even conservative-leaning outlets began to distance themselves. A host from a national news network had initially planned a segment defending Karoline. But after producers rewatched the panel footage, he canceled it. "We're not touching that," he told his team. Not with her record. Karoline's inner circle began to shrink. Her PR manager took a step back indefinitely. A longtime friend stopped returning her calls. The silence wasn't loud, but it was telling. She still had loyal followers online echoing her talking points, but their reach was fading. Sponsors don't invest in controversy. They invest in credibility, and Karoline was losing it fast. Then came the email leak. Someone from her former campaign shared screenshots with journalists. Internal strategy notes encouraging her to interrupt liberal women of color mid-sentence to throw them off balance. It wasn't illegal, but it was intentional, and it matched exactly what Jasmine's lawsuit claimed. Support for Karoline began to crumble. One GOP consultant said privately, "She's radioactive now. This isn't just a PR issue, it's a values issue." Meanwhile, Jasmine continued her work steadily and without fanfare. She didn't gloat, she didn't post online attacks, and she didn't need to. Her silence only made the noise around Karoline grow louder. Brandon, her attorney, advised her carefully. The court of public opinion is watching. Stay composed. She did, until one Saturday morning interview changed everything. Karoline appeared on a fringe digital news show, smiling and laughing, trying to appear unbothered. Then the host said, "A lot of people think you just said what everyone feels, especially about Jasmine Crockett. Let's be honest, people are tired of the race narrative." Karoline didn't correct him. She leaned back and chuckled. "Well, I won't say you're wrong. The 10-second clip went viral by nightfall." And this time, the reaction wasn't just political. It was personal. Jasmine's office was flooded with messages from educators, veterans, single mothers, and former congressional interns, people who were tired of being told their identity was just a narrative. Samira printed out the interview transcript and dropped it on Jasmine's desk. "She's spiraling," she said. Jasmine barely looked at the paper. "She already fell," Jasmine replied. "Now she's just making dust." Meanwhile, the legal process moved forward. Karoline's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss the case, arguing it violated her First Amendment rights. The judge denied it. A court date was officially set. Behind the scenes, more insiders began to defect. A former assistant reached out to Brandon's office, offering to testify about Karoline's deliberate baiting tactics during media appearances. Another, an intern who once helped prepare her panel notes, provided files showing Karoline had pre-written insults ready to use if certain topics came up. It wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated, and that revelation changed everything. By the end of the month, Karoline's name quietly disappeared from the speaker list of a major conservative conference. A publisher dropped ongoing book negotiations. Her brand wasn't being destroyed by Jasmine. It was collapsing under its own weight. Yet the public conversation was far from over. And Jasmine's voice was only growing stronger. Her message was reaching spaces Karoline never could. People weren't whispering anymore. They were talking, in offices, classrooms, living rooms, and barbershops. And the more they talked, the clearer it became. This was no longer about one remark or one person. It had become a reflection of a larger dialogue about race, respect, and accountability in public life. In Phoenix, a city council meeting opened with a speaker referencing Jasmine's case. In Nashville, middle school students wrote essays for Black History Month. Nearly half chose Jasmine Crockett as their subject. The moment had become a movement. Cable networks struggled to keep pace. Every panel had an opinion, but what surprised many was who began shifting their stance. Formerly neutral or conservative-leaning voices now admitting that Karoline's pattern of behavior had gone too far. Not because it was trendy to say so, but because they were starting to see it through the eyes of their daughters, their students, and their colleagues. She didn't even react when it happened. One commentator said during a live panel, "That's what struck me." Jasmine didn't shout. She didn't perform for the camera. She carried the weight of the moment with quiet composure. That stillness, people kept returning to it, became symbolic, a frozen frame that said, "I've endured this before, but I won't accept it anymore." Civil rights groups began hosting town halls, not protests, but conversations. A college in Oregon held a roundtable called Respect in Public Discourse. Jasmine didn't attend, but her name surfaced more than 30 times. When the moderator asked, "What does strength in leadership look like?" a young student answered, "It's knowing when to speak, and when not to dignify ignorance." Meanwhile, Karoline's image was collapsing. A viral post from a former roommate described her as someone who treated confrontation like a game, often targeting identity rather than discussing it. Another collaborator shared how, during a media training session, Karoline had practiced interrupting women of color to throw them off balance. It wasn't rumor anymore. It was a chorus. Karoline's defenders grew fewer. A few stayed loud online, but momentum had shifted. The lawsuit was no longer political strategy. It had become personal, something real. Back in Dallas, Jasmine continued her schedule. Meetings, school visits, community fundraisers. But she felt the change too. At a small event in Garland, an older woman approached her with a plastic bag holding a pair of earrings. "My mother gave me these when I turned 30, she said. "She told me they're for speaking your truth. You wear them now." Jasmine tried to refuse, but the woman shook her head. "Don't return them. Just pass them forward when it's time." Those moments meant more than any viral post. Quiet gestures of solidarity, the real kind. Brandon noticed it too. After a strategy call, he pulled her aside. "You know what people see now?" he said. "They see someone who didn't let the insult define the story." Jasmine met his eyes. "It wasn't the insult that worried me," she said softly. "It was the pattern." She was right. The power of her case wasn't just in what Karoline had said, but in the system that allowed her to keep saying it, unchecked. Now, silence had been broken. Teachers discussed the case in staff trainings on inclusion. A nonprofit in Minneapolis named Jasmine Woman of the Year for challenging quiet endurance with unapologetic strength. She still avoided interviews and press tours, but her voice carried. At a youth summit in Tulsa, her brief speech trended online. "I didn't sue for fame," she said. "I did it because sometimes you have to say enough. Enough pretending certain lines don't exist. Enough acting like we're too fragile to demand respect. I didn't want a spotlight. I wanted a standard." But while Jasmine's message was inspiring others, Karoline was spiraling, and her next move would only worsen things. Then came the quiet. Not peaceful, but heavy. Jasmine felt it most late at night, when the house was still, and she was no longer Congresswoman Crocker or a viral figure, just Jasmine, a daughter, a woman alone with her thoughts. She didn't cry, but she hadn't slept much either. The fight was necessary, but it was draining. Her father called that Sunday. Leroy Crockett had fought his own battles, marched in the 70s, arrested in Baton Rouge during a sit-in. His voice was raspy now, slower, but it still carried weight. "You holding up, baby?" he asked. "I'm all right," she replied. "You sure?" "No," she said, "but I'm still standing." She let out a low laugh. "That's what we do," he said. "We stand there." Then he added something Jasmine hadn't expected. "You remind me of your grandmother," he said. "She never raised her voice either, but when she looked at you, you knew exactly where she stood. You've got the same eyes." Jasmine swallowed. She didn't answer, but she kept that line with her. The lawsuit, the public pressure, the commentary. It was a storm. But storms weren't new to her. What kept her going was that it wasn't only her reputation on the line anymore. It was the weight of every woman who had been told to be quiet, to be palatable, to sit down. That thought kept her from giving in to exhaustion. Samira saw the in-between moments. The late strategy sessions, the spoon frozen halfway to her mouth when another call came in, the quiet after an anonymous email calling her too loud for someone who doesn't belong. One night Samira asked bluntly, "Have you ever thought about walking away?" Jasmine looked at her and said, "Every day. Then I remember who's watching." The team tightened. Brandon took extra care with press lines, knowing how fast things could be twisted. Jasmine's phone rarely left her. Every text, headline, and email could be a new mine. But there were bright spots. A college student from Oakland sent a handmade card. Construction paper, glitter, a note. "You look like someone I want to be when I grow up. Please don't stop." Jasmine kept it in her wallet. Karoline, meanwhile, was fraying behind closed doors. She snapped at staff, mistrusted a new PR rep who urged silence, and argued with her fiancé about public support. He asked, "What am I supposed to say they misunderstood what you said?" She went on another podcast. Her voice trembled slightly as she insisted the controversy was overblown. "If we sue people over opinions, what's next?" she asked. But this had moved beyond opinion. It was pattern, intent, harm. Jasmine's legal team grew stronger every day. A former employee sent a recording of Karoline laughing while reading hate mail addressed to black female politicians, calling it free content. The narrative shifted from lawsuit to character study, and Karoline faltered under scrutiny. Jasmine stayed focused, reviewing testimony, prepping with Brandon, ensuring every public line she'd ever made about the case could stand up in court. "I didn't come this far to trip on a cracked sidewalk," she said during prep. Brandon smiled. "You won't. You walk like someone who's been watching the ground her whole life." Karoline still had a few vocal supporters online and popped up on fringe sites where her base cheered, but in real life things unraveled faster than she could patch them. One Wednesday she went live on her personal channel, hair pulled back, dark circles, voice sharp. "I'm done being polite," she said. "I confronted hypocrisy. Now I'm being sued for saying what Americans should be able to say." She sipped from a mug, with an American flag in frame. The clip drew clicks and rallied her core, but it also accelerated fallout. Her agent cut ties 30 minutes later. A PAC removed her from donor lists. A former campaign manager publicly denounced her. That stung. Someone she trusted called her the problem, not the solution. Then, on a minor YouTube stream, she made a comment that finished her off. "Jasmine's whole brand is being a victim," she said. A staffer clipped it and sent it to Brandon. He called a legal analyst. "You watching this?" he asked. "Oh, yeah, that's the final nail," came the reply. The clip went viral. A conservative columnist published a scathing takedown titled, "When Being Right Means Knowing When to Stop Talking," arguing Karoline's stubbornness was now self-sabotage. Major donors quietly distanced themselves. Real-life silence followed. Friends stopped returning texts. Family told her to sit it out. A cousin even blocked her. For someone who built a career on visibility, being invisible hurt. She second-guessed everything, her publicist, content, strategy, and found nothing that could reverse momentum. Jasmine, meanwhile, had been mostly silent for nearly a week. No interviews, no appearances, no statements. But that silence was powerful, stronger than any press conference. She focused on preparation and presence rather than spectacle. The pressure was intense, the stakes high, but she kept steady.